Welcome to our exploration of The Definitive Book of Body Language by Allan and Barbara Pease. This comprehensive guide delves into the unspoken signals that influence our daily interactions, offering insights into how we can better understand and communicate with those around us. Allan and Barbara Pease, renowned experts in human communication, have compiled decades of research to help us interpret the silent language of the body. Their book serves as a roadmap to understanding nonverbal cues and enhancing interpersonal relationships. Welcome to our brief journey through the insightful works of Allan and Barbara Pease, renowned authors in the field of human communication and relationships. Let's begin with The Definitive Book of Body Language, first published in 2004 by Orion Publishing in the UK. The US edition was released on July 25, 2006, by Bantam Books. This comprehensive guide has seen multiple editions and impressions, reflecting its enduring popularity. Notably, the book comprises approximately 400 pages, offering readers an in-depth exploration of nonverbal communication. The Definitive Book of Body Language is highly regarded in the field of body language. It has consistently ranked well on various platforms like Amazon and Goodreads. While specific world rankings are difficult to pinpoint, it's clear that the book has been a bestseller internationally and is considered a valuable resource for understanding nonverbal communication. The book delves into various aspects of body language, including gestures, expressions, and postures, providing readers with tools to interpret and utilize nonverbal cues effectively. Its practical insights make it a must-read for anyone interested in enhancing their communication skills. So next, let's discuss the summary of this book before diving deeper into its contents. What if you could tell what someone was really thinking without them saying a word? Welcome to The Definitive Book of Body Language by Allan and Barbara Pease. It's not just a guide, it's like putting on night vision goggles in a dark room full of human behavior. The book begins with a quote from none other than Sherlock Holmes himself. He once said, "By a man's fingernails, by his coat sleeve, by his boots, by his trouser knees, by the calluses of his forefinger and thumb, by his expression, by his shirt cuffs, by his movements. By each of these things a man's calling is plainly revealed. That all united should fail to enlighten the competent inquirer in any case is almost inconceivable." This is exactly the kind of attention to detail this book teaches. It sharpens your ability to decode the silent language people use every day. Now, here's something that might surprise you. Only 7% of communication is about the actual words we say. 38% is how we say it, our tone, pitch, and pace. But a staggering 55% comes down to body language. That's right. More than half of what people understand about you is nonverbal. Albert Mehrabian's research showed this back in the 70s, and even though newer studies vary on the percentages, they all agree. Body language matters. A lot. So when your gut tells you something's off, when someone says one thing but you feel like they mean another, chances are their body is revealing the truth. This book takes you on a tour of the entire body, hands, arms, eyes, posture, and more, and shows you how each part tells its own story. Let's start with hands. Open palms usually signal honesty. Think about it. When people plead innocence, their palms face outward. I didn't do it. It's instinctive. But when someone hides their hands, puts them in pockets or behind their back, they may be hiding something else too. Now arms. Crossing arms? Classic defensive posture. We do it to create a barrier when we're feeling unsure, shy, or even challenged. Little behaviors like adjusting a watch or gripping a glass in front of you at a party, same deal. Your body is putting up a buffer. And then there's eye contact. Crucial in every conversation. The sweet spot? Around 60 to 70% of the time. Too little and it feels like dishonesty. Too much, and it gets a little creepy. One of the most fascinating parts of this book is how body language shows up in real-world scenarios. Take job interviews. We're told to maintain eye contact, But here's a pro tip from the authors: don't overdo it. Your interviewer wants to scan your outfit, your body language, and overall presence, so give them a moment. Break eye contact briefly, reach for a pen, adjust your chair, give them that quick chance to assess you subtly. The authors also point out something interesting about gender. In one study, participants watched a muted TV show and had to guess the emotions of the characters. Women scored 87%. Men, only 42%. Fellas, we've got some work to do. So why does all this matter? Because we've learned how to lie with words. We've practiced. But our bodies? They're honest. They leak the truth even when we try to hide it. Reading this book is like flipping on a light switch in a dark room. You'll notice things you've always felt but never understood. It makes your instincts sharper and your relationships stronger. So next time you're in a conversation, look a little closer. That hand twitch, that glance, that crossed arm, it's all telling you a story. And thanks to Allan and Barbara Pease, now you can read it. The Definitive Book of Body Language, a must-read if you want to understand not just what people say, but what they truly mean. Have you ever had a gut feeling that someone wasn't saying what they truly felt? That their words didn't quite match their energy? Well, you're not alone. And that's exactly where this story begins. In the Definitive Book of Body Language, the author shares a powerful personal journey, one that started way back in childhood. As a young boy, he noticed something most of us overlook. People often say one thing, but mean another. And if you paid close attention, not just to their words, but to their gestures, posture, and tone, you could actually understand what they really felt. That early curiosity turned into something more. At just 11 years old, he began selling rubber sponges door to door after school. It was his first taste of sales, and his first real-world classroom for studying human behavior. Pretty quickly, he realized that body language told him more than the words ever could. If someone told him to go away but had open hands and showed their palms, he'd stay and make his pitch. Why? Because their body wasn't being aggressive, it was actually inviting despite the tough words. But if someone said the same thing in a soft tone, yet used a pointed finger or clenched their fist, he knew it was time to walk away. The message in their body was louder than their voice. This gift for reading people became his superpower. As a teenager, he leveled up, selling pots and pans at night. His ability to tune into the unspoken cues helped him make enough money to buy his very first piece of property. That's right. He turned body language into a real financial advantage. But it didn't stop there. His talent also gave him an edge in everyday life, like in discos, where he could almost always predict who would say yes to a dance just by watching their body language. No awkward rejections, just pure confidence based on observation. Then, at the age of 20, he stepped into the high-stakes world of life insurance, and once again, he let body language lead the way. That same skill set, originally honed while selling kitchenware, helped him break sales records. He became the youngest person in his company to sell over $1 million worth of business in just 1 year, earning a seat at the prestigious $1 Million Round Table in the U.S. His story is living proof that success isn't just about what you say, but how well you read what others aren't saying. From sponge sales to $1 million deals, he built a career and a life on understanding people beyond words. That's the true power of body language. It's not just about decoding others, it's about connecting with them in a deeper, more human way. Have you ever looked at someone and thought, I know exactly what's going on with them, only to find out later, you were completely wrong? That's the fascinating idea behind the Definitive Book of Body Language. One of its key messages is this: all things are not what they seem. Understanding people, really understanding what's going on beneath the surface, is actually a simple process. Not necessarily easy, but simple. It all comes down to observation, watching what people do, listening to what they say, and, most importantly, considering the environment they're in. When you match these elements together, you can start to draw probable, not perfect, but probable conclusions about their behavior. The problem is, most of us don't do that. We think we're observing, but often, we're just seeing what we expect to see. Our minds fill in the blanks based on assumptions, not facts. Let me tell you a short story that brings this idea to life in the most unexpected way. Two men were walking through the woods one day when they stumbled upon a large, deep hole in the ground. "Whoa, that looks deep," said one of them. "Let's throw in some pebbles. See how far down it goes." They each tossed in a few stones and waited. Nothing, not a single sound. "Huh, that's weird. It must be deep," said the other. "Let's try with something heavier, like those big rocks over there." So they each grabbed a rock the size of a football, heaved them into the hole, and again, they waited. Still no sound, not even an echo. Now fully intrigued, one of them pointed to something hidden in the weeds nearby, a railway sleeper. "That ought to do it. No way we won't hear that hit the bottom." They dragged the heavy wooden beam over to the edge, counted to 3, and tossed it in. Silence. But just as they stood there, scratching their heads, something bizarre happened. Out of the trees, a goat came sprinting toward them, like it had been shot from a cannon. It ran right between the two men, full speed, and without hesitation, jumped straight into the hole. The men were left frozen in place, completely stunned by what they had just witnessed. A moment later, a farmer emerged from the woods. "Hey, fellas, have you seen my goat around here?" "You bet we have," one of the men said. "It was the craziest thing. That goat came tearing out of the woods and dove right into that hole." The farmer paused, confused. "That couldn't have been my goat," he said. "My goat was chained to a railway sleeper." So what's the lesson here? Things aren't always what they appear to be. The situation seemed random, chaotic, and even a little magical. But there was a very real explanation behind it all. Just like in life and in body language, what you observe isn't always the full picture. If you don't take into account the environment, the connections, the context, you'll misread what's really going on. Learning to understand people isn't about guessing, it's about noticing. And when you do it well, you start to see what others miss. And that makes all the difference. Have you ever said, "I know this like the back of my hand"? Well, here's something surprising. Most of us actually don't. In the definitive book of body language, there's a fascinating little experiment that reveals just how little we truly notice about ourselves. Researchers found that fewer than 5% of people could correctly identify the back of their own hand from a set of photographs. That's right. Something you've lived with your entire life, seen thousands of times, and still, you might not recognize it in a lineup. But this goes even deeper than just hands. It speaks to how unaware we can be of our own physical presence, and even more so, how poor most of us are at reading body language. To demonstrate this, the authors set up a clever social experiment for a television program. Picture this: a long hotel lobby, elegant and expansive. At the far end, a massive mirror was installed, so perfectly placed that it gave the illusion of a long corridor stretching straight through the hotel and out the back. It looked like someone was walking toward you from the opposite side. To add to the illusion, large potted plants were hung from the ceiling, dangling about 5 feet above the floor. These plants obscured the upper face of the approaching figure, but their body, the way they moved, the way they carried themselves, was clearly visible. Now here's the twist. That figure? It was actually the person entering the hotel, reflected in the mirror. In other words, they were seeing themselves. Each guest had about 5 or 6 seconds to observe their double, before turning left to check in at the reception desk. Afterward, they were asked a simple question. Did you recognize the other guest? The results were as amusing as they were telling. A staggering 85% of men said no. They didn't recognize their own reflection. One man even scoffed and said, "You mean that fat, ugly guy?" not realizing he was insulting himself. Women performed a little better. About 58% correctly identified the image as a mirror, while 30% said the other person looked kind of familiar. But overall, the experiment exposed something eye-opening. Most men, and nearly half of all women, don't actually know what they look like from the neck down. Now think about that for a second. If we can't even recognize ourselves, how can we expect to be skilled at reading other people's body language? This is why learning the unspoken cues of posture, movement, and gesture is so important. Body language isn't just a bonus skill. It acts a vital part of how we understand each other. And yet, it's often the most overlooked. So next time you claim to know something like the back of your hand, ask yourself, do you really? Have you ever found yourself watching a politician on TV and thinking, something just doesn't add up? You're not alone. In the definitive book of body language, one compelling question jumps out. How well can you spot body language contradictions? It's a fascinating idea, because whether we realize it or not, most of us are already playing detective when it comes to reading people's nonverbal cues. And when it comes to politicians, they give us plenty to analyze. Let's face it, politicians are masters of performance. Their lives are lived in the public eye, where every word, gesture, and glance is scrutinized. But behind the carefully crafted speeches and perfectly timed handshakes lies a more subtle language, the language of the body. This is where it gets interesting. Politicians are often seen smiling through uncomfortable questions, nodding while dodging the truth, or placing a reassuring hand over their heart while their eyes tell a different story. They wave to invisible friends in the crowd, mimic concern when they're bored, and sometimes they just pretend to be someone they're not. And here's the truth. We're wired to spot the inconsistencies. Even if we can't quite put our finger on it, our gut tells us when something feels off. We instinctively search for those little slips, the flicker of discomfort, the fake smile that doesn't reach the eyes, or the hand that fidgets when the truth is being stretched a bit too thin. Why do we do it? Because deep down, we know the body rarely lies. It's honest, raw. It leaks out the truth even when someone's lips say something else. That's why we're fascinated by these moments. We watch closely, waiting for that telltale crack in the armor, the contradiction between words and body that gives it all away. And if you're wondering how to tell when a politician is lying, well, as the old joke goes, their lips are moving. But jokes aside, mastering the ability to decode body language isn't just for analyzing public figures. It's a powerful tool we can use in everyday life to understand others better, build deeper connections, and spot the truth hiding in plain sight. So next time you watch a speech or a debate, look beyond the words. The real story? It's written in the gestures, the expressions, and the silence between the lines. Have you ever walked into a room and felt the tension before anyone even said a word? Or maybe you've been on a date, in a meeting, or just chatting with friends, and deep down you knew something wasn't being said, but it was definitely being communicated? That's the silent power of body language, and mastering it could change the way you see the world. Introducing the definitive book of body language and your body language dictionary, the ultimate guides to decoding the unspoken. Originally created as a powerful tool for professionals, salespeople, managers, negotiators, and executives, this book has grown into something far greater. It's not just about boardrooms and business deals. It's about everyday life, how we connect, persuade, and understand one another without ever saying a word. Backed by over 30 years of research and hands-on experience, this book uncovers the hidden language we all speak, but rarely understand. Think of it as your personal decoder ring for human behavior. You'll finally get answers to questions you've always wondered about. Why do people cross their arms in certain situations? What does it really mean when someone avoids eye contact? Why do some gestures make you instantly trust someone while others make you feel uneasy? This isn't just about reading others, it's about transforming how you communicate too. Whether you're trying to build trust, express confidence, or simply avoid misunderstandings, this book gives you the vocabulary and tools to do it. Reading this book is like flipping on a light switch in a dark room. Before, you may have been able to feel your way around, sense a vibe, notice something was off, but now you'll see clearly. Suddenly, you know what everything is, where it is, and most importantly, what to do about it. From navigating relationships to acing job interviews, leading teams, or even understanding your children better, body language is everywhere. And once you start to see it, you can't unsee it. Every gesture, posture, and glance becomes a clue, a piece of the puzzle. With this book, you're not just observing anymore, you're understanding. So if you're ready to stop guessing and start knowing, then the definitive book of body language is your essential guide. Step into the light, unlock the power of nonverbal communication, and watch your world change. Have you ever met someone who can walk into a room and instantly read the energy? They take one look around, and within moments, they just know. Who's comfortable, who's tense, who's got chemistry, and who's about to explode. It's like a sixth sense. But it's not magic, it's body language. And believe it or not, it was the first language we ever used, long before we ever uttered a single word. Long before we invented words, letters, or language, we had movement. We used gestures, posture, and facial expressions to express feelings, warn of danger, or even show affection. Body language was humanity's original communication system, and it worked perfectly. Even as society evolved and writing became king, physical expression still lingered beneath the surface. Think back to a time before radio. If you were a poor public speaker, no problem. As long as you could write well like Abraham Lincoln, you had a voice, even if you couldn't project it aloud. But when radio took over, things changed. Suddenly, how you said something mattered more than what you wrote. This was Winston Churchill's stage. His words had weight. His voice had power. But imagine him in today's world of 24/7 video, memes, and media spin. Would he survive the spotlight? Because now it's all about image. Today's politicians are fully aware that perception is reality. It is not just about policy anymore. It is about how you look when you re-talking about policy. That's why high-profile leaders often hire body language coaches. Their job, to make them seem sincere, compassionate, maybe even honest, and even when they're not. It's almost unbelievable, but body language, something we've been using for thousands of years, only became a serious field of study in the 1960s. Even more surprising? Most people didn't really learn about it until this book. But here's the twist. Speech is actually a newbie in evolutionary terms. It's thought that speech first developed anywhere between 2 million and 500,000 years ago. During that time, our brains tripled in size. But before speech, we relied on our bodies and sounds made in the throat to express what we felt. And the truth is, we still do. Think about it. When you meet someone, it's not their words that hit you first. It's their energy, their posture, their smile, or their frown. We feel people before we hear them. But because we're trained to listen to words, many of us completely miss the silent messages happening right in front of us. Still not convinced? Just look at the way our own language reflects body language. We say things like, keep a stiff upper lip, get it off your chest, shoulder the burden, stay at arm's length, put your best foot forward, and yes, even kiss my butt. Some of those might be hard to swallow, but hey, we've got to hand it to ourselves. These phrases are real eye-openers. As a rule of thumb, we could keep them coming hand over fist until you buckle at the knees, or turn your back on the whole idea. But hopefully you're leaning in. Because understanding body language isn't just a skill, it's a superpower. Whether you're navigating relationships, leading a team, or just trying to be understood, knowing what people mean, not just what they say, can change everything. So next time you're in a room full of people, take a moment. Look beyond the words. Watch the hands, the eyes, the posture, because the truth is in the body. Imagine a world where you had to speak without saying a single word. No sound, no dialogue, just facial expressions, gestures, and movements. That world wasn't imagined. It was real. It was the silent movie era, and actors like Charlie Chaplin were its shining stars. These performers were masters of unspoken communication. They didn't just act. They painted emotions on the screen with their bodies. Whether it was joy, fear, confusion, or love, they conveyed it all without uttering a word. Their entire performance relied on how effectively they could express themselves through body language alone. Back then, the difference between a good actor and a forgettable one came down to one thing: how clearly and powerfully they could communicate using gestures and expressions. And when talking films, talkies, arrived, things began to shift. The spoken word took center stage, and body language slowly slipped into the background. Many silent film stars faded away, but a few, those who could blend both verbal and nonverbal communication, stood the test of time. They had the complete package. Now let's rewind even further, back to 1872. Long before cameras captured human behavior on film, a groundbreaking book titled The Expression of the Emotions in Man and Animals was published. The author? None other than Charles Darwin. Although it didn't become a bestseller in every household, Darwin's work laid the foundation for modern studies in body language and facial expressions. He proposed that our emotions, whether we smile, frown, or cringe, are deeply rooted in evolutionary biology. And today, modern science has validated many of Darwin's insights. From that point forward, the study of body language began to grow. Researchers across the world started to catalog and decode the silent signals we all use, often without even realizing it. And here's where it gets fascinating. Did you know that researchers have identified close to 1 million distinct nonverbal cues and signals? That's right. Nearly 1 million ways we communicate without opening our mouths. One of the pioneers in this space was Albert Mehrabian, who conducted landmark research in the 1950s. His findings shook the communication world. Mehrabian discovered that when we're face-to-face, only about 7% of our message comes from the actual words we say. The tone of voice, how we say those words, accounts for 38%, and the remaining 55%, that's body language. So the next time someone tells you, it's not what you said, it's how you said it, well, they're absolutely right. Another trailblazer in the study of body language was Ray Birdwhistell, an anthropologist who coined the term kinesics, which refers to the interpretation of body movement as a form of communication. Birdwhistell made some startling discoveries. He estimated that the average person speaks words out loud for only 10 to 11 minutes a day. Think about that. Out of the thousands of minutes in your day, spoken words take up less than a dozen. And each sentence we speak, it lasts just 2.5 seconds on average. And yet, during those brief interactions, we're expressing much more than we might think. Birdwhistell concluded that we can make and recognize around 250,000 different facial expressions, 250,000 ways to show how we feel without ever speaking. He also echoed Mehrabian's insight. Less than 35% of a conversation is verbal. That means over 65% of our communication, what we're truly saying, is expressed silently, through our posture, our gestures, our eye contact, and our micro-expressions. These findings aren't just theory. They've been proven in the real world, especially in business. Studies from the 1970s and 80s analyzed thousands of sales meetings and negotiations. The results were eye-opening. Body language accounted for 60 to 80% of the impression people made around a negotiating table. Let that sink in. Up to 80% of your impact in a business interaction could be based on non-verbal communication alone. In fact, people tend to form 60 to 80% of their initial opinion about someone new within the first 4 minutes of meeting them. And they do this not based on what that person says, but on what they see. And when it comes to making decisions, especially during in-person negotiations, we are far more influenced by what we observe than what we hear. Over the phone, the person with the stronger argument usually wins, but in a face-to-face setting, logic can take a back seat to body language. So what does all this tell us? It tells us that body language isn't just a nice-to-know skill. It's essential. Whether you're giving a presentation, meeting someone new, or negotiating a deal, the way you carry yourself, the way you gesture, and even the way you smile, these can make all the difference. We're constantly communicating even when we're silent. And the more we understand the basics of body language, the more control we gain over the impressions we make and the messages we send. In the next chapters, we'll dive deeper. We'll explore the meanings behind specific gestures, postures, and expressions. And we'll learn how to read the silent signals that others are giving us every single day. Why should we even care about body language? Well, understanding it gives you an edge in both personal and professional life. Whether you're interviewing for a job, negotiating a deal, or simply trying to make a great first impression, your body language is constantly sending messages. Allan and Barbara Pease argue that body language is evolutionary. It developed before speech. Long before humans spoke a single word, we were using gestures, facial expressions, and posture to communicate. These signals were crucial for survival, telling our tribe who we could trust, who posed a threat, and who was a potential ally. And while we live in a modern world today, our brains are still wired to respond to these primal cues. That's why a genuine smile can melt barriers, while a stiff posture might trigger suspicion or unease, even if you're not saying a word. One of the key takeaways from this chapter is the idea of congruence. In body language, congruence means your body and your words match. When your verbal and nonverbal messages align, you come across as authentic. But when there's a mismatch, that's when the trouble begins. Think of a politician giving a heartfelt speech, but blinking rapidly and glancing at the floor, or a partner saying, "I trust you," while nervously fidgeting. These mixed signals raise red flags. The Peases suggest that people instinctively notice incongruence, even if they can't explain why something feels off. This insight is huge. It means we should not only listen to what people say, but also watch what they do. And just as importantly, we should become aware of our own body language because others are reading us in the same way. Another important point from this chapter is the distinction between universal gestures and cultural gestures. Some nonverbal cues are understood around the world, like smiling when happy or frowning when upset. These are universal and hardwired into our brains. But others, they vary drastically by culture. For instance, the thumbs-up gesture might mean great job in one country, but be considered offensive in another. The Peases urge us to be mindful of cultural differences, especially in a globalized world where cross-cultural communication is a daily reality. They tell a story about an American businessman giving the OK sign with his fingers in a meeting overseas, only to find out later that it was interpreted as a rude gesture. Oops. So, context matters. While the human body has a shared language, it also has local dialects. And finally, Chapter 1 drives home the idea that body language is deeply contextual. You can't analyze a gesture in isolation. A single crossed arm doesn't always mean someone is defensive. It could mean they were just cold. A smile might hide discomfort, not joy. The Peases encourage us to observe clusters of gestures and consider the context in which they occur. Just like a single word can't define a paragraph, one gesture can't define a person's intent. So always look at the bigger picture. Reading body language is an art and a science. It's not about jumping to conclusions, it's about becoming more perceptive, more aware, and more in tune with the signals people send, often without realizing it. And that wraps up Chapter 1 of the definitive book of body language. We've just scratched the surface, but already you can see how powerful and revealing nonverbal communication really is. In the next chapter, The Power is in Your Hands, we'll explore how simple hand gestures can dramatically change the way others perceive you. Want to know why some handshakes build trust while others destroy it? You won't want to miss what's coming next. If you're eager for Chapter 2, drop a comment below and let us know. The more you engage, the faster we'll bring it your way. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned, because the body never lies, and neither do great books. Until next time, watch closely, listen deeply, and remember, sometimes silence speaks the loudest.